Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy V! You could never lock my secret. Oh no! Suddenly, I don't leave me! Let's begin. Indeed.
Okay, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, no matter where you may be, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat, and today I am speaking with Bex. I'm just going to say Bex. Is that what you meant? Is that what it's supposed to be? The BX?
I think most people say BX, but you could say Bex.
BX?
That's fine
I like
too.
Bex. It kind of rolls.
That's originally what it was supposed to be because my name is Becca.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody started saying BX, and I was like, well, this is fine.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say Bex. I'm gonna
That's fine.
rebel. And it's a really interesting how we came across your channel. Like most of the time, the kinds of guests we get on are people that our patrons suggest, that we talk to because maybe they work in a field related to men's issues like men's mental health or law or divorce or child custody. But you kind of came, we got tagged in another post related to something going on with the Department of Homeland Security. And you were the one that kind of like shined a light on it, from what I can tell. So first of all, welcome to the show. It's good to have you. And really appreciate you bringing a light to that. Because while we suspected that stuff like this was going on, we didn't know how, I guess, like how much energy was being put towards it. So let me ask, because you seem like you're like an interesting person in terms of the content you do. What is it that you consider yourself like in terms of what you do and why?
That's a great question. So I'm a licensed private investigator in Texas. I started streaming on Twitch about 5 or 6 years ago. At the time, I was a pro-level competitive shooter. And so I talked a lot about guns and shooting and self-defense. I was also a women's self-defense instructor. And so after I started to, I'm a mom and I was kind of like naive to the internet like 5 years ago, but as I started to kind of get into Twitch, I started to realize that there's a whole nother world that needs to be, communicated to children and parents about the safety that their kids or the dangers that their kids face online. And so my content kind of started to take a shift towards like online child safety and advocacy, which led me down to pretty dark paths. I guess it was in 2022 that I had worked to try to expose like a giant, massive child predator ring on Twitch, coordinated child predator ring on Twitch, which everybody was kind of like, she's lying, blah, 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 she's crazy. But then we got Bloomberg to finally, blow the whistle on it. And that resulted in Twitch making some pretty big changes to how they manage, moderation and, child safety and stuff. So there's really good things that we can do on the internet to keep people safe, right? Especially kids. So I'm really a big believer in that. And so, I guess starting there, people have brought me things. I've ended up just kind of getting curious and looking into things. And I guess that's what I do. The way somebody described me the other day, they said, it sounds like you just pull a string and just unravel things.
Pull a thread. Yeah.
Just pull a thread and like see what happens. Right. So I've seen some really weird, crazy, bizarre stuff.
Yeah. I watched your Twitch video like way back when I say way back a week ago, which is like 100 years in internet years. But like when I first discovered your channel, your Twitter page, I looked at your video about Twitch, and I'm not surprised by much of it. I mean, I've seen a lot of evidence to show that Twitch or these social media, not just Twitch, but like a lot of this sort of social media stuff like Twitch and YouTube can be exploited as like a gateway, for children
Oh yeah.
to get into really inappropriate content, grooming content, things like that.
Oh, you're talking about you watched my pinned or my highlighted reel.
Yes,
Good.
yes,
Good.
yes.
I
Yeah,
wish
I
more
did.
people would watch that because it
No, I thought it was
gives more
great.
context to how these predators utilize every single platform there is to like get the material from the kids, sell it, distribute it, advertise it. All of that's done on Discord, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Snapchat,
Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram, all of them. All of them have the problem.
What do you think? Do you know about the new, well, it was kind of like a brief thing. There was this new thing that Twitch allowed. I think it was tasteful nudes is what they called it. Did you know about that? It was pretty recent. Because I thought Twitch was for video games, but what do I know? So,
well, it's taken a downhill slide, and that's we started seeing the girls with the bikinis and the hot tubs, and the rest of us kind of all of a sudden they've got like 15,000 viewers, and everybody's just it's not just people who are paying them because they're horny. It's people who are like just like cringe watching and like blasting it on their own streams, and it's getting a lot of rage attention too. And so it definitely, we knew it was going to be a bad thing for the platform, and it is a slippery slope that's actually played out. Well, they actually do art. Like on Twitch, I have like art streams where I do like airbrush, like
paintings
and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So, but the other day when they started that artistic nudity, the top creator in the art channel was just like a loop of girls twerking. So,
yeah.
And it had like 800 viewers. So I was like, all right.
I know. I also make digital art, and I was doing it online for a while, but you just can't compete with that. So.
Well, to be fair, now those people aren't trying to watch my stream anyways. I don't.
No, it's a different audience.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So you're a mom. How many kids do you have?
One.
And they're very young. I mean, I don't want to pry until you're 6 years old. Okay. So it's a boy. So you have an interest in protecting your child as at least part of it. I mean, getting to the truth and all that is also, and you said you're a private investigator and interested in self-defense and guns and stuff like that. You're kind of all over the place. But there is something about like, a mama bear and what sort of inspires her
certainly
to do this stuff.
I mean, my daughter's been I remember I helped to get this guy arrested. He was on YouTube. You can look him up on YouTube. His name is Josiah Maizukami, and there's like people with millions of viewers who've like talked about it, but we found this guy. We worked with predator poachers to get him arrested, and he's in jail. I mean, he's in a mental hospital now, but
yeah.
He was like a model in Malaysia, just this characteristic, like normal looking individual. But I know that my daughter had walked in at one point when I was like doing some video editing, and she asked me who it was, and I said, that's a bad guy. And she goes, he doesn't look like a bad guy. And that's when I had to have a talk with her. Like, they don't look like bad guys. They look like normal people, right? And sometimes you might be chatting with someone online, and they're not who they say they are. They say that they're your friend, but really they want to come take you away, kind of stuff. Yeah. Because most people are still stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers outside, but they don't think that their kid might talk to a stranger online. And I mean, my kid, and it's not like I don't watch what she's doing online, because I do, but man, she has done some crazy wild stuff, like accidentally spent $100 on like Barbie accessory points on her little game,
Oh, no.
So, kids can do stuff without even realizing it, and you might not know till it's too late. So
Yeah. Do you think that in the age of social media, and this is a little bit of a digression because I want to get to the ADL thing and the Department of Homeland Security stuff, but do you think that parents are either more negligent or just have a harder time competing with the attention that their child is spending on social media? Like, I'm 50. When I was growing up, internet didn't exist. So, my parents knew who my friends were. They knew where I was going. I didn't have the opportunities. But sometimes, and I do get this sort of thing where this mantra of like social media is the problem. But I wonder too if it isn't like a failure on the part of parents, to sort of like be involved.
I mean, it's both things. And as a person who's advocated for kids and had discussions with parents whose kids have been victims, right? one thing that I've always taken away from that is that every parent says that would never happen to us. I watch what my kid is doing. And so the problem that I have online is when people, like you're approaching it correctly. Yes, it is. There are two parts. I don't think it's like that they're just being bad parents. It's that they don't have the literacy. They don't have the literacy to understand. They need to be educated, not like lambasted and called terrible parents, right? We need to learn and like teach other parents and not be like weird and judgmental, because a lot of times I get people who are trying to just defend the platforms for some weird reason. I mean, these guys are evil. Like, I don't know why you defend them, but you know, they'll be like, well, it's a parent's fault. And it's like, this is what we call a conversation stopper, right? Because you're trying to say, too bad for that little kid. He should have had better parents. Well, they're still a victim, right? We still have to try to work on the you know, not every kid some parents are great and this still happens to their kid. Some parents are awful and it happens to their kid, right? Not every
Yeah, there's no magic bullet, right? There's no magic bullet. And the thing is, it's not just social media. Like, you know, I don't know if you've noticed about like the well, I don't know if this still happens, but it is happening a lot, where you have parents showing up at, you know, PTA meetings and school council meetings, like shouting at what kind of material the teachers are exposing to the children, you know, this sort of pornographic, really inappropriate stuff. And, or at least that's what the parents believe. And it's sort of like coming now because they you know, they didn't know that this was being taught to their child until they find out. And so I think that it's like, it's not just the internet, you know. This is like an ongoing thing.
I think it's pretty rare. I mean, I live in Texas, so like, you know, here it's a little bit different. In fact, I think they passed laws against that recently. But you know, here
you mean they banned books?
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I mean, they banned like, you know, that early kind of weird fringe education where it's teaching the kids too much too soon, and stuff that maybe should be left out of school completely and just left to the parents, right? You should only be, in my opinion, they should only be learning educational stuff. However, you know, my child, obviously she's in the first grade. And when she's in kindergarten, they started to hand out like a pamphlet and say, hey, like we have advocacy group that's coming to the school to talk to them about like stranger danger. And like, that's going to include talks about
super important.
Like, talks about touching, like inappropriate stuff, right? Which is kind of awkward for parents. We talked to her about that too, but it's good for her to hear it from somebody else. So what I did, and they left a link in there. So I like went to a link and I read all the material and I said, okay, this is not weird. This is what she needs. Every kid needs this, right? Well, I talked to the teacher later and she said, you know what? So many parents opted their kids out. They didn't even look. They just shut it and said, I don't know what this is. And I'm not going to do it because I've heard all this stuff online about, you know, all this bad stuff. And that's unfortunate because their kids have, you know, they've passed up on a really good opportunity to help teach their kids how to identify abuse.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think that at the end of the day, what you did was the right thing. It's about practicing discernment and basically like, okay, this is, and I'm going to look into the material. This is appropriate. Maybe I'll even help, you know, like in my individual case with my daughter. So, you know, she gets like the most benefit out of it.
When you talk about these DHS grants, I mean, you're going to find that this year they focus very much on early education, meaning that they're teaching this K through 5, and they're coming up with these same NGOs and teaching them how to identify hate and how to be resilient against this and this. And again, it sounds good in theory, but what I've showed you is that these things are very subjective. They're very biased and politically driven. And they can have kind of nefarious agendas behind them that you may or may not agree with. And you might not even know this is happening because they just incorporate it into curriculums now.
Yeah, it's kind of concealed. It's like slipped in through the back door.
Oh, yeah, it is. I mean, like with this grant that I discovered with the Diverting Hate program, right? I got a really good question on Twitter by somebody who was like kind of giving me pushback, which I don't mind, right? But I will say, like, I'm sorry if it's hard to understand because it's hard for anyone to understand. And I'm doing the best I can on like Twitter, and like it's very difficult to like link sources and stuff there. But you know, somebody had asked me, you know, like, why is it so complicated? Why can't you just explain it? And I'm like, because the grants, honestly, they're so vague and they use very like non-specific language. They don't actually say what they do. You have to read between the lines. And then even then you have to go look at the output, like the report, to see what they actually did and how that matches up with the grant. And this guy said, you're telling me that the grant doesn't have what they're going to do? I'm like, yeah, I am telling you that. You know, not only that, but like it doesn't say diverting hate program. If you're looking for the grant, it's going to say Arizona State University. And then, so you have to kind of figure out that they're working with the McCain Institute, and the McCain Institute is with Arizona University. So they're hidden. They're very, very obscured.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of like sort of legislation that gets passed through, you know, like the Senate and the House, where they'll give you like, I don't know, like 100 pages, and they'll just pass, and they'll call it one thing, but it'll be like a bunch of other stuff attached to it, and only people who are willing to take the time to go through, comb through everything to figure out what's actually like, you know, on offer, those are the only people who are going to see it. Yeah, it is. It's very sneaky.
I've been researching these grants for over a year. And just recently, DHS released a whole trove of them via Freedom of Information Act, which is why I've been spending my time like eyes glazed over trying to like get through these grants, right?
Yeah.
Even though almost all of them have something that'll make you mad, I promise.
I'm sure, yeah.
But this is just the first one where I actually saw names and mechanisms like directly. That was to me, that was like, this is the best evidence. We already knew this was happening, but we didn't have evidence until now. Now this is like really clear evidence of exactly how they're going about doing this, you know? So that was kind of a first. Yeah.
So I guess, how did you come across this, redirecting hate document that you ended up sharing with us? And what made you, why did you want to do it? Because we're not exactly, we don't have the best reputation with the mainstream and all that, you know? So I'm sort of interested as to why you thought this was worth like telling us about.
Yeah, well, because it's an infringement of your constitutional rights. I mean, I don't agree with what most of the stuff Andrew Tate says. Or I mean, to be honest, like I don't pay that much attention to the manosphere. I'm probably missing a lot of what he says because I'm just picking up what like people
like the sound bites that get put out there. Yeah,
so I'm not going to say that, but like, you know, of course, like you know, everything within the manosphere, there's some stuff that I disagree with, but I don't have really strong opinions. But I don't really care them. I'm like, no offense, but like I don't have the bandwidth to like also care about. I have to stay focused and I also have to kind of stay unbiased, right? But like the way that you can be sure that I'm unbiased is that I really don't have any connection to the manosphere. I don't really care, right?
I know that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, what I do care about is that, you know, if the DHS is doing this to you, they're going to be doing it to me next. They're going to be doing it to anybody, right? And the big picture is that what they're doing is trying to expand the blame, like, you know, the blame surface area here from like this like tiny minority, minuscule minority of people who commit violence. And instead of going after the people who are radicalizing them directly to commit violence, they're reaching all the way out here to like things that make them mad. The things that make them angry because they're triggered by it, right?
Or things that threaten their sort of hold on you know, the narrative. I mean, that's because we're not. I mean, some people would say we at Honey Badger Radio, we're not really manosphere. I guess when I think of the manosphere, I think of like the kind of, you know, like you said, Andrew Tate types that are like trying to. They're usually selling something. You know, or they're just trying to help, like, you know, be like a representative of some kind of what they consider to be an optimum masculine identity. But we're not doing that. We advocate for fathers, you know, that should be involved with their children. You know, it's like the legal stuff, really, and that's mostly what it is. To some degree, there's a cultural angle too, because the way that men are viewed. We have to like sort of fight against, because there is, like you said, you know, they take like the most extreme examples and then they say this is what men are like, and we have to step in and say
too. You got to avoid fighting fire with fire, right?
Because we do.
Women are OnlyFans whores, and it's like, have you been to the grocery store lately? And just
No, I know. Yeah, and
virtual reality where you're very fixated on what it's showing you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the intentions of these researchers are kind of like, I feel like they started pretty innocuous. Like, I think that they started with good intentions, because to some extent, the algorithm and what's trending and the biggest voices and who can pay for the biggest management teams, that's another part of it, right? Those people can make it to where all you see is this, like, you know, line of like almost like distorted perception of reality. And it's okay to have other pathways and try to boost those up and try to throw. I wouldn't have any problem if they were throwing money behind a PR company, throwing money behind someone to try to get a positive voice out there, because that's their freedom to do that. But when they're taking views away from somebody else to do that, that's when you get into this like, well, this is not even a gray area anymore. We've crossed the line of suppression, and because it was funded by the government, this is like a serious, in my opinion, serious constitutional violation.
Absolutely. So then, what are, I guess, like we talked a little bit about that, and your document was no longer accessible. I do have the diverting hate thing. I'm gonna put it on the screen really quick. You won't be able to see it, but I'm showing it to the audience. And it's basically just your sort of write-up, the United States counterterrorism apparatus.
That's the one. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
What were we saying isn't available?
There was like there was a an outline, and then there was a video that went with it. We actually watched some of the video. I
didn't know where you got that from. I wanted to find that.
Yeah, it was like it was sort of embedded in one of the other documents. Or it was in like the thread. I can't remember which. And we saw that basically they
problems with that. Oh my God.
Yeah, there was. And the thing that concerns me, it's you know, is exactly what you said. I think that it is absolutely like unconstitutional. We're, you know, even the people that I wouldn't necessarily like say were like the Andrew Tate types, I don't think they're dangerous per se. I think that we are only like sort of, I don't know if there was like, what do you call it? Concentric circles, you know, like here's us and here's them. And we touch a little bit because there's like a general, you know, sense that we are trying to help men, but we're not interested in the kind of stuff that, you know, that the men who follow him are looking for. But I don't think that those guys are dangerous. I mean, like no more than any other person, at least not to the degree that you need to get, you know, the Department of Homeland Security involved.
Well,
but it will affect us too, because in that video that Karen was mentioned, and Karen was mentioned because she interviewed people that they didn't like, and maybe she's been
forming hate. Like that's that's where I started to go, okay, now there are some accounts, and this whole thing was wrapped around the incel community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there are accounts where I would say, yeah, it's fair to probably try to, I'm not like suppress them for freedom of speech, but like to look into these funnels that actually go to these actual radicalization forums where people are actually being radicalized by terrorists. Those exist, right? But when you're focusing on this, like, you know, this outside of that, and trying to say, oh, it's the start of that ideology. Well, let me tell you, DHS has been doing this since 9/11, right?
Yeah.
The war on terror was literally just, I mean, it's still going on, but, you know, at the time it was trying to say that, trying to expand these radical Islamist extremists who were just this fringe radicalized segment of, you know, of the Islamic community, and try to expand that to be like all Muslim Americans, all immigrants from the Middle East. And basically they were able to justify monitoring, surveilling these people, forcing them to become informants, and their human rights were absolutely just trampled. And now they're doing it to people in America under the guise of domestic terrorism.
Yes, exactly. You know, yeah, and sometimes, I mean, like I have a good friend, Paul Elam. He runs a men's sort of refuge, because this is the thing, like you mentioned the incel forums, and I think that what happens is some men, some are really lonely, some are struggling with a lot of social issues or mental health issues or whatever, and they're looking for a place. Yeah, a lot of them, and they're looking for a place to you know, commune with other men, to like talk to other men. And some of those places can be healthy and some of them can be unhealthy. And we want to, like, you know, that our goal here at HPR is to try to offer a kind of refuge for, you know, not just men, but also women who, you know, are feeling like, I don't know, like they're just carrying too much on their shoulders. They have too much baggage they haven't dealt with, whatever. They don't get any help. They don't have community. And the thing that's and Paul was one of those people. He has a group called XY Crew, and men go there and they exchange advice and they help each other out and they listen to each other and and all that, and they because the mental health industry is not really it's not really helpful to men. It's sort of built on a political structure and its substrate, and a lot of men, they don't find a lot of help there, and we certainly don't want to drive men to anything like extreme, like ending their own life. So we're hoping that we can give them like a sense of purpose. And so one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because I think it was the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, declared Paul's group, the XY Crew, as like a hate group that is like that hates women or something, male supremacy, I think they called it. And the only thing he was doing was offering men a place to go and talk to each other. And I'm on there sometimes on Thursdays. And I haven't been there in a couple of weeks. That's my fault. But, we talk about projects that we want to do. We teach, like some guys showing other guys how to play instruments, things like that. So it's pretty harmless overall. But what concerns me is that I think that it's like you said, there are places that are really potentially very unhealthy that could lead to self-destruction, where people encourage, they try to radicalize each other. They try to drive each other to do extreme things, self-harm, whatever, or they just fester. And I think that when these groups target them, the only thing it seems like they want to do is break it up and sort of scatter those men. And I think that that only serves to make things worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I get where you're coming from, and there was a point where I may have agreed with you there, but I think that what I've added to this, like there's another layer to this whole situation, right? There's another way that this should make everybody kind of irritated and make your ears perk up, because what's actually happening is that it's not necessarily just like dejected young men in a community radicalizing each other. What we have is actual terrorists that are radicalizing these men, and they're predators, and they have posted up in these places. And I mean, I'm telling you this because I've tracked them around, and they're literally leading incels to like ISIS websites and stuff, right? So like this is the real deal. They're dropping PDFs of propaganda in there, and trying to get them to join telegrams and Discord servers. It's very, very sketch. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably feds, but that's beside the point. Like there's a lot of actual people in there who I would consider to be like, I'm like just using my eyes and common sense, not incels at all, but actual terrorists.
Sure. And I'm sure that like where there are men like that, there will be these kind of predators. I think that's absolutely true. I mean, that's what prisons are, right? In a lot of ways, that's where a lot of that happens too. So I'm not defending any of that. I think that that's where this stuff grows. I think that it's really a ripe place to find for sure, yeah, men that you can radicalize, or like especially if they're angry.
It does. I mean,
and
you watch these researchers come out with articles that say stuff like, oh well, incels are have a high prevalence of autism, or they're neurodivergent, or a lot of them are very depressed, and all of this have long mental health histories. And it's like, yeah, those are the types of people who they want, that they prey on those types of people specifically, which is why they flock to those kinds of forums.
Right.
So, but this is not something that's been coming up in any of these grants. Like this is where the terrorism component comes in, and yet nobody mentions any of that in any of these studies, which is
so you're saying they're putting these NGOs out, but they're not directing them at the proper targets.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
Yes.
So then, okay. So I don't think that what you're saying is is at all. I guess like I don't have a problem with any of that. I think it's true. I think that I know that it is because, like I said, I've worked with convicts, and like they. And I've worked with a woman, for example, who was you could say a kind of therapist. Like she would work with the extremely criminally insane, or like guys that had like life sentences, like just the worst kinds of crimes. And she would talk to them and you know, and she would learn that, you know, that is a place where this kind of stuff happens, where people recruit essentially, you know, kind of radical terrorist types. And so I'm with that. That's the thing that I want to avoid. I don't want these guys, you know, what I would say the majority of incels are harmless, or if they're going to harm anyone, it'll probably be themselves. I don't want them falling into that trap. So I guess I'm saying I agree. I just think they need like a healthier, you know, outlet or a healthier place to be. Do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I do agree with you 100%, and you know, that's definitely part of the equation. And one thing that kind of, I don't really know if there's any substance to saying that, well, if we just got rid of this one forum, they would all go underground. They always say,
no.
not you, but
Oh, okay.
they'll go underground, and then we lose track. And it's like, well, first of all, no, they won't, because they're making money off this, and they're not going to make money if they have to go underground, right? We already saw Kiwi Farms almost sink because of that. And they only got pulled back up because they got brought back online. But, you know, and also don't act like the feds don't know what the dark web is. Okay. They're the ones running the exit nodes there. They understand that dark web, right? But we also don't really have any solid evidence that these groups will like break up and then like reform as something bigger and scarier, right?
No.
Because, again, what we're talking about is terrorists who are trying to find a place to go and prey on people, right? And of course, there's going to be incels who are violent, and there's going to be, you know, incels who are just toxic and want a place to like vent and stuff. And I don't care about that. I'm just going to be really honest with you. I'm not the type of person that sees hate speech and is like, oh my gosh, pearl clutching. I don't care. I don't care if you call people slurs. Like, I mean, I don't think it's nice. I think it's not a good thing to have. And if you were my son, I'd probably give you a good talking to, right? But like, I'm not going to go caring over like some like toxic speech, because I don't think that that's actually really hurting or affecting anybody.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about in these places is content so extreme that I've never met a person who I showed it to who didn't have the same exact response. And that response is always universally, how is this not banned by now? How is this legal? How are they not doing anything about this? And that's where you get really confused. Say, yeah, that's a great question. Why aren't they doing anything about it, right? But then you see this arm, this like big profit, money generating complex over here that's just using it as basically research, and they're using the people in it as lab rats, and they're using this big scary, look at how scary this place is, to justify more and more terrorism grants, more and more research, more and more censorship campaigns. And they're using that whole thing to justify it, because, you know, I'm going to tell you straight up that the stuff in there, I've seen stuff in there that's absolutely illegal. And so it's not, you know,
when you say in there, what do you mean? Like in where?
Specifically in the incel forum.
Okay.
You know, and there's stuff that like I would have thought would be illegal, but actually aren't in the US for some reason, which is interesting. But, you know, there's stuff in there that's absolutely indefensible, stuff to do with kids, a lot of like really gross stuff to do with kids, borderline, like, you know, borderline illicit stuff.
Yeah.
And
how much of that do you think is like, because I mean, like how much of that glows in the dark, I guess is what I'm asking. Like, you know, I wonder about that.
You know, I do too.
Yeah.
I can't say for sure. I can say that I know for a fact that they do work with law enforcement. I know for a fact that law enforcement monitors the forum heavily, and that several people have actually gotten knocks on their door, and a couple of them have even gone to jail based on the federal agency surveilling this place. And again, it's just like, why? Like, it seems like you're just keeping it alive because you need it. You know, it seems like you're using it. It really does seem like they're just not taking action because they're benefiting from it in some way. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say that I would just go ahead and be on the safe side. If anyone ever tries to like invite you to a Discord server or Telegram like that, they glow. You're gonna go to jail. Do not proceed.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense. Right. Makes sense. So I got some super like some super chats and super chows. So I'm gonna read through them really quick, and then we can look at well, a little bit of the stuff from your data. Anything that in specific that's sort of like that you really want to bring attention to, because there's a lot here.
Yeah.
But let me first bring up these super chat. I think this is the first one I got. This is from Richard Bier, and he gives us $5. Thank you, Richard. And he says, there is a trans age and transgender individual in Canada who is the middle school girls swim team and is changing in the same locker room as the girls. Said individual was born 50 years ago, but now identifies as a middle school age and a female. And in Houston, there was a kerfuffle because one of the story hour drag queens happened to be a registered sex offender. I am aware of that one for sure. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, I this is like kind of getting outside of the wheelhouse that I like had intended to operate in, because I don't act as though that there are no evil men. Like, that's ridiculous, right? Obviously there are, and I don't defend them simply because of that. I just try to make sure that a man is treated justly, and I say the same about a woman. So yeah, I mean, I think that there definitely are people who take advantage of this kind of progressive attitude towards sex and gender, and they use it to prey on people. And it can be men, it can be women, and that's it. I mean, that's what I think. So I don't know if you want to say anything to that. It seems like a little bit of a digression, but he sent the super chow, so I always read them.
Yeah, you're
So.
good.
No,
Yeah,
nothing.
I haven't really thought about it too much. What the question is, I guess, but
Well, I mean, yeah, but there are. I guess what it is that, you know, there's this this queer theory attitude that says that essentially there is no such thing as a man or a woman, and it transcends age and everything else. And some people take advantage of that. They you know, they are predators, or they have autogynephilia or something, you know. So
yeah, that actually reminds me of like a comment I left for you guys when you were trying to figure out what transmaxing was, and I was trying to explain it.
Oh, I had a transmaxer on the show once, but what is it?
Well, first I want to say, like, I saw somebody mention Kiwi Farms, and like I want to like clarify, like I go so extreme that like I don't even think Kiwi Farms should be banned. Like I go there occasionally to find, like, you know, breaking information on stuff. And I don't even think that rises to the level that I would put this at. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that what I'm talking about is like it. I can't even say it on the stream, like, but it's so bad that I would show it to you and you'd be like, why is this? Oh, why is this here? You know what I mean?
Yikes.
Like,
yeah,
not hate speech. I'm talking about extremely violent content and stuff to do with kids.
Okay.
So I just want to clarify, like, that's what I mean by, like, I don't really care about hate speech, like, you know.
Yeah, we're talking about harm,
yeah,
not hate speech,
yeah.
Right?
Okay. Convincing people to kill themselves, kind of stuff, you know, like actively, not just like, you know, saying, yeah, you know, like in jest, but like actually goading them to it and trying to convince them and giving them.
Yeah, there was a guy who sold poison through the mail, right? Like that was one of the things in the BBC. What was that?
Kenneth Laws.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Kenneth Law.
Yeah, he's actually just now been charged with I think, I don't know how many counts of homicide, but or maybe it was, I don't know if it was homicide. I have to go. No,
I think I did read it, but it wasn't it was basically like
something else.
Like an assisted suicide, but like not in the Canadian government kind of way. But
it's a very interesting trial. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'll be at the edge of my seat waiting for that one.
Yeah.
So about the transmaxers though, like it's actually super funny because I've kind of blown them out of the water not too long ago as well, because when I was looking into all of these networks, which, in just full disclosure, you know, we're still talking about the incel forum. It does funnel people. It does act as a funnel to get people to these other communities. Like they're sorted according to like their vulnerability, right? So if they're a little bit effeminate, and maybe you'd be better as a woman, right? And it doesn't sound too crazy when you're it doesn't, I mean, it is crazy, but like doesn't sound too off base until you understand that what that is. And the person who's you most likely talk to, I don't know, but like that person has done like podcasts talking about the final incel solution.
Yeah. I think it's
wanting to sterilize these men.
I think we like them. Yes, I agree. I think we are talking about maybe the same person because they were German. And you know, there was a lot of support for them, but sometimes people I'm all about freedom, right? Like do what you want, but I think that it's probably good to understand what the potential consequences of long-term consequences of a choice like that is, because we're talking about irreversible damage.
Sterilize you. They're trying to get rid of you.
Yes, that's right.
Make you go away.
Yeah, it is. It's eugenics, really.
It is. That's what they claim it is. That's what they openly call it. Which is crazy because so the whole transmaxing thing was started and it was called a cult. Like it was started as a cult by a very sick, very dead person named Nathan Larson, who was eventually arrested for grooming and kidnapping a 12-year-old girl. And he died in prison from a hunger strike. He was just absolutely insane. He actually started a lot of the things that you're seeing now, like transmaxing. He started it calls it a cult, wrote a Bible that included a lot of sexual abuse and nasty stuff that I've ended up getting he calls it his manifesto. And I've gotten it banned. I've got it banned off the Internet Archive even. Like I've gotten it banned from pretty much every place that I've seen it because of the content in there is like a lot of child sexual exploitation. So eventually he kind of slimmed that down and made the Transmaxing Manifesto from that by cutting out the stuff that would offend people and trying to rebrand it after Larson died. This other guy did.
Yeah.
Vintology is his name, and he's a very, very sick individual. He literally openly calls it a eugenics cult, and the child sexual stuff is still lurking there behind a very thinly veiled public face. So beware of that because it's very exploitive and very dangerous, especially to kids and young adults.
Yeah. Have you heard of this thing called the Jaffe memo?
I don't think so.
So it was a memo. How do I put this? You might have to look it up, but I think it was put out by members of Planned Parenthood. There are measures to reduce fertility by universality or selectivity of impact in the US, and they had a whole plan laid out. And one of the things was to essentially groom children into transitioning so that they would become infertile. But there's a lot of other things too.
I've said for a long time that there's I try to stay away from like conspiracy. Well, I don't like the word conspiracy theories because honestly, you sometimes need to do that to figure out what's going on, right? But,
you need to ask the question.
I have to do that. I have to theorize about things quite often. And one of the things I've been forced to theorize, even though it sounds crazy and it's not something that before all of this I would have even entertained, is that there does seem to be like a genuine concern about like some kind of depopulation agenda with this, funneling these productive young men who are like not really contributing to society and leading them to their ultimate fate. And, like I said, a lot of them are neurodivergent. A lot of them have, mental health issues. It's really just taking the most vulnerable men in our entire society and exploiting them and harming them. And not only is it something kind of creepy like that, but there's people making a lot of money off of this. Like they're the people who are selling suicide kits and poison to people as young as 14, 15 years old have died. And it's just tragic. As a mom, it breaks my heart. And I would really like to see it stop.
I agree. I think that it starts.
Won't do anything. It's like education is the only thing we have right now is like warning people, right?
Yeah. Okay, more super chat. So Albernator Retro gives us $2 Canadian and says honey badgers have a good nose for finding stuff. Well, thank you, but I didn't do it. All credit goes to Beex. And then I got another one from Richard Bier for $5. And he says, a boy rejected by his bill. I don't know if that's what I meant to say, but A boy rejected by his bill will burn the entire village down just to feel its warmth. African proverb. Yes. Thank you for that, Richard. Appreciate it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to clarify, like that is what we're looking at. I just clicked over to your YouTube, and that is what's on the screen right now, is that the suicide website where they are selling that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To kids and
Yeah.
making Kenneth Law had sold over 1,200 of these kits all over the world in 40 countries, and they've already confirmed hundreds of deaths just to that person. So the death toll is actually unreal, considering he's only one such person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I admit I was a bit suspicious because we generally our run-ins with the BBC and the New York Times, they're not reliable sources a lot of times, especially when they talk about the stuff that we talk about. But this looks pretty cut and dry, and I'm sure that you have a lot of other sources to sort of corroborate that. So, and plus, I don't think it's like really all that crazy to presume that there would be people that would exploit this weakness. And
yeah, and the other thing is that, like, the BBC and the New York Times, they haven't really said it. They haven't said anything about the manosphere. Like, they haven't. This isn't about that at all. This is like the thing that we're talking about with the DHS grants is something different. Like, these guys are purely focused on the parents of these people who have died, the victims. The parents have formed like this ad hoc advocacy group, and they have lobbied Congress, and they have passed laws around this, prohibiting the sale of this particular poison. They have in the UK, they've contributed to the passing of some certain online safety acts, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I worry that taking that route will just kind of they'll basically exploit this tragedy to try to push through like widespread censorship and surveillance, which is like the opposite of what we need. So it's a very nuanced situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we want something to be done about it, but not at the expense of our rights, right? We have to find a balance. And so
yeah, I agree with that. What would you do if you could, like, if you had the authority? How would you handle it? Have you thought about that?
I mean, I am doing it. I'm trying to raise awareness about it, because I feel like what happens is that a lot of communities don't know that this is happening. And I think that if they did know it was happening, they'd be very careful about promoting certain people and platforming certain people. Not that it's like wrong to platform people, but if you're not also warning and trying to help people stay away from those. That's the rabbit hole that diverting hate should have been focused on, right? Instead, they're worried about Tate bros who are just they're going to grow out of it, right? They're kids. They're just kids. They're just being toxic. This is something completely different that they're not even addressing, which is very strange. In fact, there's a lot of these researchers who they've been blocking me, chain blocking me on Twitter for asking questions about their study design. Because again, if you have a forum that's that attracts people who are already mentally ill, already neurodivergent, and the lowest of the low, men who are the most vulnerable and at rock bottom already in their lives, right? And you advertise a website there that sells them the means to kill themselves, right? Don't you think that there might be some confoundance there, right? So how are you also putting out these studies and saying, well, incels are this much more likely to commit suicide? Well, yeah, but have we even addressed the fact that they're being persuaded to do it, right? They're being basically convinced to do it. And so it's very strange to me to watch these studies come out.
Well, why do you think someone would try to push someone to suicide?
Well, for one thing, they're sellers of poison, and they make money from them buying it, or they sell other things too besides poison. But that's one thing. There's also some, and I know it sounds insane to say this, but there are some people who are on there and appear to be actually evil and doing it because they are actual evil and enjoy it. There are people who try to convince them to stream it in Discord servers, and then that gets leaked on various gore sites. So there's a lot of really nasty, awful, just traumatic stuff like my eyes twitching right now. Because I've seen a
Wow.
lot of really nasty things.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I think we got time for one more thing, and then if you could stick around, we're gonna do a patron show. We have some patrons. Usually, we bring in like one or two more people, and they'll want to talk to you some more if that's okay with you.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Okay, so I did get one more super chat from Albert Native Retro. Where is it here? He gives us $5 Canadian and says Bex needs to go on Badger Talk and have the women tell them about GQ writer Jeff Charlotte and his pedophile pal showing up at ICMI. This was in 2014. GQ tried to write a hit piece on the International Conference on Men's Issues, and what they did was the journalist showed up with a convicted pedophile, pretending like he was a normal sort of typical guest at the International Conference on Men's Issues. Of course, it's not like most of these guys, they're like fathers, and they don't get to see their kids. It's very simple stuff, but they were trying to, I don't know why, I guess tarnish our reputation. I wasn't working with them at the time. This was like
weird.
a year before I started, but yeah. So thank you, Albert.
Or what?
Huh?
You think it was like set up?
Oh, absolutely. It was a setup. The GQ guy brought the pedophile with him. And was like, and then he basically reported it as, oh, there was a convicted pedophile there. You mean the guy you brought with you?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They're shameless, dude.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, you could be catching real pedophiles right now. Like you could be actually doing, journalism.
Yeah. All this money that's going to suppressing people like you guys, right? Which is like, what? That's your tax dollars. You're taking that out of your salary.
Mm-hmm.
What's it actually doing? And sometimes, I was going to mention like the people that they're trying to divert to, right? Like these safer options, these safe platforms. A lot of these are like, big money making opportunities where you click around and it pretends like it's going to help you, and then it tries to sell you a $400 program. Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these are for-profit things that they're pushing people to. It's just gross.
So it's another scam.
Nasty. Yeah. It is basically just a big money, complex where there's, positive feedback loop where, you're incentivized to keep terrorism going. You're incentivized to continue to expand the definition of terrorism. More people make more money when you do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, so you sent me this thing. We're gonna just mention it briefly, and then we'll go into the patron show. The FBI and the ADL working towards a world without hate. So is this is like a transcript of a talk or something?
I have to remember. So I found this on Lauren's Twitter, I think.
Lauren, a friend of yours?
On Twitter is I don't know. I have to look it up. I feel bad.
It's okay.
Just call her Lauren. But
yes, I think I saw that.
That's who I was quote tweeting.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
I wanted to read through this.
Actually, has some stuff about fusion centers and stuff in it. So this is kind of another angle of the same. So mostly what my document talks about is this diversion or this redirect method, right? Which is one of the softer approaches, to be fair, because the other approaches involve basically trying to build these giant, fusion centers where they basically the feds come in and train law enforcement on what kind of radicalization indicators to look at. And of course, they're using the same BS stuff, right? For that. And they're also kind of, in my opinion, trying to gain more control over the states. Where the federal government shouldn't have authority over those investigations. And so this is like the threat assessment team, threat management, and the fusion center stuff.
James Comey, huh? Like this is like from the top, from the tip top.
This is an FBI press conference, I think.
Yeah.
The anti-ADL National Leadership Summit. Blah.
Well, we'll talk more about this stuff in the patron show. So I'm gonna head in there now. If you guys are members and you're at the appropriate level, you can join the actual Zoom call itself for the second half of this. But otherwise, you can just watch us on YouTube in the patron show if you're just like a regular member. And this is just because we do this extra content so that it keeps us able to continue to create this content. This is how I put food on the table for my wife and I and my dog. So please consider, joining us by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord. You'll be able to enjoy all of the additional content. There's lots of extra shows. We have community things. We do writers workshops, all kinds of fun, sort of community oriented stuff. And if you want to just check it out for free, you can go to badgernation.online and you can still access the Discord that way. So Beex, so I'm going to call you that now. Where are some places where people can find you?
It's BX_on_X on Twitter. And I'm banned from YouTube, but
why are you banned? Too real for them?
They never told me, but I was reporting on some similar content to this, but it was a much different situation. And I think that I just got too close to the truth because they literally banned me and didn't give me an explanation. I never had a strike on my channel.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, wow. They refused to tell me why. Even the YouTube partner support refused to tell me. So somebody made a decision. Anyways, I'm on Twitch and Kick, also BX Streams. So you can check me out there.
Is your content like all over the place? Like you do painting sometimes and you do.
Well, I usually paint or I play video games, but I usually rant about the stuff or like the government, like in the background.
Okay. Yeah, I love ranting about the government. All right. Well, thank you, Beex, and thank you guys for joining us. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any other sort of super chats or anything. No, it doesn't look like it. I don't want to deny anyone. But if you want to send us another one after the show is over, you can still go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip and send us a message, and we will be sure to read it on the next show, which will be tomorrow. We'll be doing the news. But with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. There are links in the description to various sources you can check out yourself. Please follow Beex on her social medias. I did include those in the description as well before the show. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thanks, guys, so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we'll talk to you guys in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.